Hey guys, it's Ben here with the Half Court Heave podcast. I'm here with Arjun and Isaac's replacement. No, I mean Colin's here. Colin Phillips, how you doing?
Good, good.
Yeah, Isaac couldn't make it today, and we found his filler. No, but before we get into it, actually, I do want to talk about our merch. It is cheap. It is not free, but it is actually on discount right now. You can go get hoodies and you can go get covers and pillows for 25% off for the winter time. So you should go check that out. The link will be in the description of this episode. And also go ahead and like and subscribe so that I get the pay of sacrifice for listening to our Shun talk about football and basketball for about like an hour. That's painful enough. But anyways, I do want to talk about the first thing we do want to talk about today, which is our MVP picks for the next NBA season, which started tonight with NBA preseason. But Arjun, who's your MVP pick next season?
I'm gonna have to go with Steph Curry in this one because I would say that with the injury of Klay Thompson, this has fueled him even more. He's gonna get even more. He's gonna play like 40 plus minutes a game. I mean, we all know what he's capable of. He did have a terrible injury last season, but I think he's going to come back even more fueled. He's going to have Wiseman, who's going to be a great addition to this Warriors team. And we all know what Steph Curry is capable of doing. He's a two-time MVP. I think he's going to do a great job with this Warriors, even though without Klay Thompson, they may not make it as far in the playoffs, but he's still going to do a hell of a job with them. And I just have him over those other guys.
Uh, I I can't agree with that, honestly. I can't agree with Stephen Curry being the MVP. I mean, there's too many good guys above there. And also, Klay Thompson, you talked about Klay Thompson. I don't think that fuels him more. I think that just adds to the fact that Klay Thompson's a huge off ball weapon for him, which I know it's not going to hold him back completely because it's Steph Curry not having Klay Thompson, but it's going to hold him back from the MVP numbers people think that will come out of him because he doesn't have Klay Thompson to hit on the corner. Instead, it's Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins, who are great players, but they're no Klay Thompson. You know what I mean. But I think obviously Luka's up there, Giannis is up there, and I really don't have a pick for this year. But I think I do have a dark horse, and you got to hear me out on this one, all right, of a guy who could potentially win this award this year. And I think I actually said this last year. And this is Joel Embiid. I think Joel Embiid, he's not my pick. If I had to pick a favorite for this award, it would probably be Luka, because, I mean, you can see what that guy does. But I think that if I had to pick one guy to be the dark horse for the MVP this year, it's Joel Embiid because I see big things out of the Sixers this year. We saw the last time the Sixers team had like a team with shooters around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. You saw Joel Embiid put up great numbers, and that team was the 3 seed. I think they can do that again. I think they could even go up to the 2 seed if they fully click together. They got Seth Curry and Danny Green. I think he's a dark horse for this award, and I think if I had to pick a favorite, I would say it's LeBron James. And I think that this Lakers team will have such a good record this year that it'll be irrefutable that he has to win the award. He will still be the leader as much as he does want to say it's AD to pass him the torch of the best player on the Lakers so he can carry them for the future. But I'd say my favorite is LeBron James for this next NBA season since I think their record will be so good and his stats will be what LeBron James normally does. So I have LeBron James for the MVP next year. Colin?
Um, Arjun, I don't like the Curry pick. I'm going to start off with that because this is not something that I think of much with Curry, but I think this season he might force shots.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if he'll trust Kelly Oubre. I don't know if he'll trust Andrew Wiggins like he would trust Klay Thompson. And I think he's going to take shots that maybe he wouldn't take where he would have passed up before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to hurt his numbers some. I'm not really sure his points per game is going to be that much higher. I think his shooting percentages are going to be lower. And I think it's going to be a very different dynamic to the team, and it's going to be an adjustment for him.
Yeah, I mean, like you see, like in Curry's past seasons, especially with Kevin Durant, as Colin said, you see Stephen Curry wasn't forcing shots, but there were other threats that they had to worry about. On this team, it's really like, of course, you have to worry that Andrew Wiggins could give you a good amount of points any given night, but of course, your main worry is by far Stephen Curry. Back when he had Clay, back when
Wait, Ben, let Colin finish his take.
All right.
Yeah, so my MVP pick this year is going to be Luka Doncic. I think the numbers that Luka has put up so far in his career are honestly just amazing. And I mean, we look at his last season, and he's 28 points per game, nearly 29 points per game, almost 9 assists, and 9.5 rebounds per game as a point guard. That's nearly a triple double. That's near Russell Westbrook type numbers, and he is a far better player than Russell Westbrook. And I think his team around him. I think the addition of Josh Richardson was interesting because I think that helps the defense, and it shows that their organization is willing to put the offense completely in his hands. I think with a healthy Porzingis, that helps him. They can move the ball into the paint, and the defense isn't laser focused on Doncic. And I really think that the organization is completely focused on running all the scoring, everything, all the plays through Doncic. And so I think he's going to be the complete focal point of their offense, and his volume alone is going to be what causes him to win MVP.
Yeah, I think honestly,
I'm with you on the fact that Luka is I would definitely have him there in the MVP conversation. Remember, this is an early prediction, so we really don't know. We haven't gotten to the start of the season yet. But the thing is that when you say that Steph Curry's his overall percentages are going to go down maybe by a little bit, well, we know what Steph Curry is capable of. I mean, he's had multiple seasons where he was the unanimous MVP. He had
those teammates though. He had the guys that we talked about though.
But Ben, that's the thing though. I don't think it's going to negatively hurt him as much as you guys think it will be, because if anything, Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre can be great role players. Of course, they're not Klay Thompson like you said, Ben, but they're still great players. I mean, Andrew Wiggins, who isn't a great defender, he's still a terrific scorer. He's a 20-point per game scorer. A lot of people don't appreciate the fact that
he averaged 17 on the Warriors last season.
No, but Ben, that's the thing. That's the thing, though. But if you're saying that without Klay Thompson, without that additional scoring boost, that's going to be negative for him. That's the only thing that's going to do that's going to open up more shots. And even if he's going to take more contested shots, he's one of the guys in the league that can make those contested shots. He can go in triple. He can have three people guarding him. He can still he can still hit a three with three people guarding him.
Yeah, I like the fact that Steph Curry's obviously going to be in that contention, but I don't think compared to the other guys, especially with how talented the league is for this year and for the future, I don't think Stephen Curry has a necessary chance when you look at the other guys that are up there. I think, of course, Steph Curry, when you look at that team, even if he does put up production like he did the season before he got injured and when he last had Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, I still don't think he would win it because this year they're tempting to fall out of the playoffs. I think a decent amount of people have them falling out of the playoffs. There's not a crazy percentage like that they would be a top team. And as he said, as Colin said, is that you have to be a decent playoff team unless you're putting up crazy numbers. Like Russell Westbrook when he was the 6th seed and he put up a triple-double per game, I think 31 points per game too. That's when he won the MVP as the 6th seed because of the numbers. They were just undeniable. I don't think Stephen Curry can put up those undeniable numbers with the team he has and coming off the injury for an entire year. But I think that, going back to my betting, I can't bet. I've heard a lot of people say Kevin Durant, I can't do that. A, because he has Kyrie Irving next to him. B, because he's coming off that injury. He even himself said that he's not 100% confident he's still Kevin Durant he was before. He needs to see it on the court. Of course, Karis LeVert thinks different, but I can't bet on him. But of course, my betting odds go on the guy that it's almost impossible to bet against, and that's LeBron James. But anyways, I do want to talk about the next thing on our list, which is what is the ceiling for the Russell Westbrook Wizards next season, Colin?
I think 6th seed is their ceiling. I see Milwaukee, Boston, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, and Miami finishing above them. And I know Miami is kind of that team that people say, oh, well, the Wizards can finish above them. Miami is one of the best coached teams in the NBA. They just are coming off of a finals appearance. And people forget this. Miami is coming off of a finals appearance, and people are talking about them as a 6th seed all of a sudden now. There's no way. There's no way.
Well, they were a 4th seed last year.
I do not see Miami repeating. Miami's a good team. The Russell Westbrook-led Wizards could end up with the 6th seed because they Russell Westbrook really elevates that team, I think. Bradley Beal isn't forced to do everything. You've got a guy like Rui Hachimura who's going to really develop in his 2nd year. Thomas Bryant has shown flashes of a lot of promise. I think their signing of Davis Bertans was he's overpaid. I will say that. It was a good signing to get him to stick around. He's an offensive weapon. And I just think Russell Westbrook can really utilize those weapons. And he's he's the first option. I don't think Bradley Beal's the first option anymore, so I'm not sure how that'll work for him. I think his percentages, his effectiveness will go up, and I think Westbrook will take a leadership role in that team, which he has apparently already done in practice, and the team seems to be taking to him really well. This is a playoff team in my mind. Their ceiling is the 6th seed, though, because I think the East is much more competitive than it has been.
That's where I disagree with you, because I know you were talking good about the Wizards, and I think very good about this Wizards team next year. Of course, Jack Spencer would too, as we all know. But I think that their ceiling for the next season, I'm not shy to put it at the 4 seed. I mean, when you look at Miami and you go, oh, that's a great playoff team. But do you really doubt that Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal and this entire team couldn't be a better regular season team than the Miami Heat? I mean, the Miami Heat did go to the finals last year. That was great. They did great in the playoffs, but they were a 4 seed last year. They weren't the top team in the East, and a lot of people now think that they are the top team in the East, which I don't get along with. I think that you got a team with Russell Westbrook and the best supporting cast that you could possibly get for Russell Westbrook. You get a star who's primary off ball and can put up 30 points per game in Bradley Beal. That's perfect for Russell Westbrook because he's always the on-ball guy. He's the first option. And then you look at Rui, you look at Denny, you look at Davis Bertans, got 16 mil a year. These are all off-ball players. And then Thomas Bryant's an offensive center. And this team can space the floor. That's perfect for Russell Westbrook. They space the floor while still being big. And I see this team with the regular season pests they have on this team. Of course, you can doubt their playoff performances. I could say this team could easily be a first or second round exit no matter where they are on the playoff map. But I think that this team's ceiling, their absolute ceiling, which I don't think they'll reach, is probably the 3 or the 4 seed. I would say their floor is like the 10 seed because this team could go anywhere but I think that I got them going around the 6 or the 7 seed. Like you said, their ceiling is, but I say their ceiling would be the 4. Well, Arjun, what do you think?
Okay, I'm with Colin on this one because I think that they're just not good. They're not going to be above those teams. Ben, I'm disagreeing with you on the fact that they could have a better record than the Heat because, like you said, like I said in the last episode, I'm very hesitant to call this. I do not want to call this a fluke. I call it a Cinderella run because it was an amazing run, but it's not going to happen again. This team, though, in the regular season, though, they're just getting better. Bam's getting better. He's still young. Tyler Hero's getting better. Jimmy's still going to be the great player. He's not going to put up 30 points per game. He's going to put up like 20 points per game. Rodgers is going to be a good addition. They re-signed him. I mean, this team, Kendrick Nunn, they're all getting better. They're all progressing. They were a 4th seed. So that since they were a 4th seed and they were still so young, that only means that they're just going to get better. And you're talking about the Wizards. The Wizards have a good system going around them. I mean, we're talking about the ceiling. I think that the Wizards are going to be probably like a 7th seed, a 7th seed, a 6th seed. But my problem with them is that they don't have a lot of bench. They don't have a lot of bench power. Like who's gonna come off the bench? Ish Smith. I mean, Bryant's a good center.
You're underrating Ish Smith there, but also like that argument is kind of lazy. Like Russell Westbrook can play 38, 40 minutes per game if he actually wants to, and I bet he will want to after the role he had in Houston. The guy looks happy as hell, and he's going to probably play a lot of minutes. This whole team, the starters are going to play a majority of the minutes because they lack that bench. But I mean, like the Heat, they lack the star power in the starting lineup that the Wizards do for the regular season. They have Russell Westbrook, who's like one of the single greatest regular season players of all time ever since KD left. This guy is absolutely miraculous in the regular season. Again, I'm leaving out the playoffs because I don't think they'll be a good playoff team, but this team could absolutely be a threat to go into the finals. I mean, if this team had their regular season team go into the playoffs like they played in the regular season, I don't mean they can go to the finals, but this team is absolutely a threat to be a top 3 or top 4 seed in the East because like the Pacers are like they're middle of the top of the East. That's what they were last year. I think they'll be like a 7th seed this year. You can't tell me that Russell Westbrook can't be better than the Pacers next year. You can't go out there and tell me that Russell Westbrook can't be better than the 6th seed last year in the Philadelphia 76ers. You can't tell me that's a real thing because that team struggled so hard. I mean, I do think that the Sixers will be a very good team next year, but you can't tell me that the Wizards don't have that same ceiling with the talent they have on their team.
But Ben, you're telling me you think the Wizards could be the 4 seed behind what 3 teams? I want to know what teams are leaving out of that.
I would say the Nets, and I would say the Bucks, and then after that, I would say the Celtics also.
I don't see Philadelphia dropping out of that. I know the last few seasons have been frustrating for Philadelphia fans. I love it because I cannot stand them. But they have Doc Rivers as a coach. I think Doc Rivers is a very good coach, regardless of what happened with the Clippers last season. I think they improved this offseason. I think they got shooters, which they needed. I think Ben Simmons will have improved for once. I think that Joel Embiid comes back with a passion, and I think he really tears it up this year. And if they can stay healthy, I don't see them outside of a top 4 seed. And I just don't. You look at the Wizards next to them, and Philadelphia is just miles better. They
have the more talented team, but the team fit is very questionable. I mean, ever since Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid have taken that jump together to be those top players like they are now, people have been saying you need to separate them because they can't play on the floor together. This team can't space the floor together. Ben Simmons can't and won't shoot. Joel Embiid needs a shooter running that point spot. And I mean, the question has already their entire careers together been the fit of these two. And I don't think they will drop below the Wizards. I think that the Wizards do have way more than the capabilities to be a 3 or a 4 seed above them, though.
Yeah, and the Wizards aren't guaranteed a fit either because, I mean, Russell Westbrook, there's a lot of narratives about him. I don't believe a lot of those narratives, but we don't know. There's not a guaranteed fit with the Wizards there. And so it's a really big question mark. I just don't see him being quite that good.
Yeah, I'm with Colin on that one, Ben, because the fact that you said that the 76ers have failed with this Embiid and Simmons thing is pretty much completely false because they've been a 3 seed. They've been a consistent 3 seed. They've been a 4. They were like a 6 seed this year. This year was a whole mess. But like Colin said, they've got shooters. They've got a better coach. I mean, they've got better management. Hell, they could be pulling Harden. So they've got a bright future. And to wrap this up, I really don't see them being below or the Heat or the 76ers being below the Wizards, even in the Wizards' ceiling.
Yeah, I know. I think that the Sixers' floor is the 5 seed because of how competitive the East is going to be this year for once. And I do think their ceiling is the 2 seed because, I mean, you've seen what they can do in the past, and this team has already developed. We can hope. No, this is the Sixers I'm talking about. Like, you can see clearly that Ben Simmons hasn't developed in the past, but he's been hyping it up, how he's going to be able to shoot this year. And of course, I think that puts their ceiling at the 2 seed because of also how Daryl Morey has played out that team and gotten all the pieces together. But in total, I think that the Wizards, I have them probably at the 5, 6, or 7 seed because that's just about where I think their talent ends up in total, because Russell Westbrook, of course, you can question the fit. You can question if he can stay healthy the whole season with his shoulder. But generally, I think that this team could be a top regular season team in the East. But anyways, I do want to talk about our next thing that I do want to talk about, which is what is the ceiling for a healthy Zion with no minute restrictions next season? Colin, do you want to start this one off?
Sure. The Pelicans in the offseason lost Drew Holiday, who averaged over 20 points per game, or right around 20 points per game. And replacing that, I think some of that will be Zion. I don't think Zion is the first option. I think Brandon Ingram's the first option. I think Zion's behind that. That could change, but I don't think that changes right now. I've got Zion at 25 and 10. I think he averaged 22 and a half points per game last season in 27, almost 28 minutes. He's not going to get that many more minutes than I see him getting a little over 30 per game. But you got to understand this guy has a history of injuries, and I just don't see him getting that many more minutes when you have decent power forwards and centers on the team that can back him up.
I'd say, yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think that he probably won't play. He'll probably play 30, 28 minutes per game. I would say that's around where he plays. I mean, that's what Giannis played last season in his MVP season. But, I mean, when you're talking about just the hypothetical of if Zion Williamson can play a full season healthy with no minute restriction, I mean, you can't tell me his ceiling isn't at least near the MVP caliber player contention. Last year, what did he play, 20 minutes a game, and he put up 22 and 9? I know it was a small.
He played 28 minutes per game.
It was what?
28 minutes per game.
Yeah, that's still a very small sample size for a guy who next year, say, if he doesn't have a minute restriction, he can stay healthy, since we've seen he's gotten slimmer over the summer and all the break that he's had. That Zion Williamson, I mean, if he can stay healthy and play maybe like 36, 38 minutes per game like a real franchise player does, and I don't think Ingram holds him back from doing that, I think he could be an MVP caliber player. I'm not saying at all that he's going to win it or be in that contention, but like his ceiling, his absolute ceiling is absolutely MVP contention for this year if he can stay healthy and not on a minute restriction, especially with
All
their
right,
new head coach.
Ben, first of all, I know you're a Zion fanboy. I know that. But you're taking it too far to saying that his absolute ceiling. I get his absolute ceiling is, I mean, he's the ceiling is this guy's got an absolute, like, one of the best. I mean, his potential is absolutely insane for the rest of his career, but you're talking about for this year, like Colin said, this Pelicans team already has Brandon Ingram. They have Lonzo Ball. They have a lot of depth. I mean, they have a lot of young talent on their team. So is Zion going to average like 35 and 15? No, he's not. I think Colin.
No one ever said he's going to average 35 and 15, but you're talking
MVP numbers. An MVP is a guy who's the most valuable to your team.
You're talking about you mentioned Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball is a facilitator at heart. But
yeah, I know, but
Ball passes the ball.
You can't tell me that Zion Williamson has the potential to be the most valuable player to his team with all the talent that he has. He's going to come in. Stan Van Gundy says he wants to unleash him. First of all, Zion is not going to be playing 35 minutes because he's so injury prone. I'm predicting 25 and 10, but the probability of Zion being like the most valuable player to his team is so low to where like he's going to be a candidate.
No, I think you brought up. I don't think he's gonna. No, it's if he plays these minutes. If he plays these minutes, doesn't get injured, this is what he'll do. And the team, you said there's too much talent on the team. If that team has too much talent for Zion to win the MVP, then Steph Curry can't win it. Then Luka Doncic can't win it. Then all these guys in the league, then nobody on anybody but the Knicks or the Pistons can't win the most valuable player in the league because they have too much talent on their team.
I agree. I don't think they have
Brandon Ingram is great, but Brandon Ingram is built to be a second option.
That's going to progress. The Warriors don't have that much young talent that's going to progress. That's going to want to be the starting. Kelly Oubre isn't going to want to be the spotlight.
But he's still going to put up like a good amount of numbers. You're saying that he has too much help. Steven, like that's up to Van Gundy to help out with if the young guys think they should be the top guy or not. But hey, I mean, they wasted the first overall pick on this guy last year, and he put up a great number in the small sample size that he did have when he played. So of course, Van Gundy's going to try to unleash Zion. He's lost a lot of weight this year, and I mean, if he plays a full season without injury, Brandon Ingram was built to be a second option. I've always said this. I mean, he's a great scorer, but he's very off ball with his scoring. He can put up 20 points per game as the second option. I don't think he's going to demand to be the first option on any team, especially when he spent a whole year with LeBron James. I mean, you look at Zion Williamson, this is their franchise guy. That's the reason they drafted him, to be their franchise guy. And I'm not saying at all that he's going to be the MVP this year, but I mean, when you're talking about absolute ceiling with a guy that coming into even college, we were saying is the next LeBron James, you can't say that his ceiling isn't the MVP.
So my question to you all, Dennis, is he an all-star this season?
Yes, if he's healthy, absolutely. And I think he will stay healthy because, I mean, all the precautions that they're taking, they're making games more spaced out. There's 10 less games. I think he'll stay healthy, and I think that he will be an all-star this season. I mean, he put up basically all-star numbers last season, but he just played after the all-star break.
Yeah, if a guy like Sabonis can be an all-star, then I think.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm with you guys on that one. I think he can be an all-star. The health question, even though they are taking more precautions, they're spacing out the games, he still has a health risk. I don't want to be that guy to say he's going to get injured, but you have to take into account that there is a high probability chance, because even if you say that, I know a lot of people have been saying that, Zion, over like quarantine, Zion's gained like 10 pounds of muscle. First of all, it's not possible to gain 10 pounds of muscle. I mean, you don't understand how much muscle that is. And first of all, the guy lives in New Orleans, so cut him some slack. Gumbo, the food there is delicious. But I mean, just in general, I think that he can be an all-star if he stays healthy. Of course, I want him to stay healthy. He's got great talent. But yeah.
All right. Next thing I do want to talk about, it is probably the most trending thing in the NBA besides James Harden as of right now, which is Paul George contract. That's all I have to say. I don't think there's really a topic to talk about, but I'll just say, was Paul George overpaid? I'll start this one off. Yes, obviously. I think this is the worst contract in American sports, depending on how John Wall plays the season. I mean, this was a $48 million per year when he's 35. I don't know what Steve Ballmer was thinking. Of course, there is some upside to it, though. Arjun, Colin, I know you guys are going to hate on the Clippers, so I just want to bring some upside to the situation. If they don't sign this deal, Paul George had to be the one to say, this is how much I'm taking, or else, because no general manager would ever upfront offer that. So when you look at this contract, I think it's Paul George or nothing, because they have basically, like, they've given up all their first round picks until like 2027. So you take this team, you're like, okay, Paul George can be the one to get us Kawhi Leonard back and make him sign a contract extension or re-sign in the next free agency. And even if Kawhi leaves, then we have Paul George to maybe trade. I mean, it's because other than that, they can't rebuild through the draft, and they're not a free agency target. I think they had to get Paul George to sign the pen and paper, but obviously he was overpaid. Arjun, what do you think?
I'm going to say this, that Paul George is, in my mind, the most he realistically is worth is around 25 mil, because he brings a lot to the table in the regular season. He gives you good playmaking, scoring, and he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. But if you just watch highlights from his 2014 year and from this year, he's just lost so much athleticism. He just doesn't look the same. He's older. Why would you pay a guy, like you said, he's 35? If you wanted to secure him, why would you pay him that much money for 5 straight years? If you wanted to secure a guy, you don't pay him for 5 straight years, even if it's that much. I mean, Paul George is just, he's such a liability in the playoffs. He's done it's history what he's done. But Colin, go ahead.
I think he was far overpaid, but I agree with Ben. I think you have to look at the organization he's playing for. The Clippers are not a free agent destination. They don't have their first round picks. And again, if you lose him, you'd lose him for nothing. You don't get anything. And I think it's easy to sit here and say, Paul George is so overpaid. But at some point, Paul George and his agent know his value to the team. They know if he's gone, the Clippers are nothing, because Kawhi's gone. They don't have draft picks. So he and his agent are sitting there saying, hey, listen, you keep giving us money, because he knows exactly how valuable he is even after this playoff performance. So all these people on Twitter and Instagram are just clowning them because they're saying, well, you paid him so much money, but he is so valuable to the franchise even after that playoff run, because without him,
and I would take a $48 million 35-year-old Paul George rather than whatever they would get other than Paul George for whatever,
like a 1 mil
whatever
low
cheap,
heartless. Yeah, I get that.
For whatever cheap contract they could. And I mean, yes, it's a bad contract. It's the worst contract in American sports, in my opinion, depending on, I think John Wall's playing right now as we are talking, but as they play this season, you can see which is really the worst contract in American sports. But there's really not much to talk about here. I do think this is all they can do to try to get Kawhi Leonard back. They got Serge Ibaka. They, for some reason, didn't get an all-star point guard when he demanded an all-star point guard. And then Steve Ballmer was like, hey, what about Terry Rozier? And he was like, no, man, no. But generally, that's all we have to talk about for this. And I do want to talk about now James Harden, as I mentioned before. James Harden has been adding the Sixers. Well, besides the Sixers and the Nets, he's added the Heat, and he's added the Bucks and other contenders to the teams that he would like to be on. I do have a couple questions to actually ask you guys, which is the first one, which is, if you are the Sixers, would you give up Ben Simmons for James Harden, depending on the package? Arjun or Colin, what do you think?
I'll start this one off, but I'm going to keep this brief because Harden can do a lot for your team. We know what he's done in the past. He is a top 2 scorer in the NBA. There's nothing you can do to change my mind. Him and KD are up there. He's such a high volume scorer. And if you have the chance to give up Ben Simmons as a centerpiece for Harden, straight up, you take it if you're the 76ers, because Daryl Morey knows exactly what Harden can do for your team. And Simmons, although he's a young generational talent, he hasn't really progressed in all of his years. He stayed the same in points, turnovers, steals, rebounds, and assists. His numbers are virtual. They've always been 18, 6, and 7 with good defense. with great defense. But if you're looking for a guy who can put up 40 points per game, Harden's probably the one guy in the league that can really do that. So if you have the chance, I would definitely go for it.
I disagree with you, actually, Arjun. I don't think that if you're giving up Ben Simmons that you would want to acquire James Harden. I would say if you can give up Tobias Harris and then Matisse Thybulle and then Tyrese Maxey and then all the draft compensation that you can possibly give them without being in a Clipper situation, then I would say do it. But I don't think you should give up Ben Simmons for the thought of getting James Harden. I mean, yeah, like this team does put them into like immediate top tier contention for that title next year. But is James Harden really going to be the one to will you through the playoffs? I mean, he's gotten his teams to the playoffs. Ever since he's gotten on the Rockets, they've been the one team to not miss the playoffs. But have they done anything? No. Daryl Morey has put everything perfect that James Harden can ever wish for around him in the Rockets organization. What's he going to do for him on the Sixers? I mean, he's gotten him Dwight Howard. He's gotten him Chris Paul.
The Rockets have
he's gotten him his best friend
multiple times in the conference finals. He's
lost in the conference finals multiple times.
Yeah,
he's gotten him his best friend. He's gotten him Chris Paul. He's gotten him anything he could ever imagine having. So why would anything else on the Sixers work? Joel Embiid would just be the second Dwight Howard that he got him. I mean, again, like James Harden's a great player, and he's not the Russell Westbrook type where I would not want him on my team, like I've said previously on this show. But I do think that with James Harden, if you're giving up Ben Simmons, I mean, you've said it. I've said it. Stephen A. Smith has said it. So many people have said it. If Ben Simmons can just shoot at an average level, not even just like from deep, not even from three, if he can make people respect him from deep, he's going to be he's going to be one of the best we see in this generation because he is just so much like that. I mean, you said I'm one to say that he's shown no statistical progression in his career, but that's because he hasn't changed his play style, and also he has progressed in his career because if he didn't, he wouldn't have been a defensive player of the year candidate this year and not in the previous years. That doesn't make any sense. But I think that if you're giving up Ben Simmons in the deal, especially if you're giving up more than Ben Simmons, I can't accept that deal if I'm the general manager of the Philadelphia 76ers, because also you failed the team last year by getting rid of all the shooting options and the bench, and then you just saw them rot. But the last time we saw them, they were a 3 seed when they had shooters last. I mean, this team was great when they had shooters last. So if you pair up these two, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and you give them a full season to rock with Seth Curry, to rock with, I mean, now you have Dwight Howard off the bench, you have a deeper bench, you have Tyrese Maxey off that bench, you have Danny Green starting now, I think. I mean, this is a very good shooting team around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. If Ben Simmons can let it fly this year, I would rather have Ben Simmons for this Sixers team than James Harden.
So here's the thing. What you said was if they get James Harden, they're immediate title contenders, which indicates you don't think they're immediate title contenders right now. So if you're a general manager, there's pretty much one thing you want to do, and that's contend for a title. So if James Harden puts you in that immediate title contender category and you feel that team around you is good enough, which the 76ers, they definitely are because you have Joel Embiid, you have Tobias Harris, you have Matisse Thybulle, then you pull the trigger immediately.
No.
In my opinion, Ben Simmons has not progressed very much. Ben Simmons does not show willingness to shoot the ball. James Harden is a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent, and we can speak about his flaws. We can talk about how he's never won. Put him in this system. Get him out of the Rockets, put him in this system, and see what happens. Because the 76ers are in a position where they're not going to win a title with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. They're going to be very good. They're going to be a top 4 seed year in and year out. But if you're a general manager, you don't want to be a top 4 seed because you get a bad draft pick and you don't win anything. And the fans are not happy. And so you get somebody that fills the arenas when arenas can be filled and wins a championship.
I know. The thing is, I don't think James Harden wins them a championship. And also, yeah, it makes them immediate title contenders to everybody's mind because they have, of course, the second best or even debatably the best center in the NBA alongside the best shooting guard in the NBA, undisputed in the regular season. But when it really cracks down to it, you don't have to, when you're a general manager, you don't look at the right now. You look at, hey, if Ben Simmons really is a good shooter and Doc Rivers or all these shooters on the team are really the thing to push him over the curve to really shoot the 3-point shot, why would I give up like if he really could end up being like, of course not LeBron James, but like near what LeBron James is, if he can have that type of potential when he starts shooting and makes people respect him from deep, why would I give up LeBron James for James Harden? That doesn't make sense.
But you know what? This is the third season we've talked that this conversation has been happening. Oh, Ben Simmons can't shoot. If he develops a shot, at some point we're going to have to sit here and say we're going to stop saying if Ben Simmons develops a shot. He's not developing a shot.
I mean, no, I think that he has a shot. I mean, he displayed it in the bubble before he got injured, but now that Brett Brown isn't their horrendous coach anymore, I mean, you can see the potential that he has. I mean, even when Brett Brown was their coach, eventually in the bubble, he started shooting that three once he had time to think for himself when the NBA season wasn't happening. He started shooting it from deep. And I mean, now you have Doc Rivers, who, I mean, he has historically blown leads in the playoffs. Of course, everybody talks about that. But Doc Rivers could be the one to get him to shoot the ball. I mean, you have great people on this team, and Ben Simmons has probably noticed the fact that he hasn't had any progression from three. Don't you think his trainer has noticed? Don't you think everybody on the team has noticed? Don't you think that the entire management has noticed? I think that they are going to make it.
Coaching is not going to affect this because Brett Brown didn't say, oh, Ben Simmons, don't shoot the ball. I mean, Doc Rivers isn't just going to come in here and suddenly change that. Coaching is not going to affect that. It might affect the rest of the team around him, how the team plays, how they use Ben Simmons. Coaching is not going to affect whether he shoots the ball and how he plays as a whole. Ben Simmons is not going to suddenly become a changed player because they have Doc Rivers at the helm. Coaching doesn't.
I'm with you on Colin. I'm with Colin on that one. But Ben, you called James Harden a poor playoff performer. He's never going to get you above the hump. But how can you say that when James Harden has been under a notorious D'Antoni system, which has been proven? I mean, with you look at the Steve Nash Suns, they played great in the regular season, but they always came short in the playoffs. You look at how the way Harden's played; he made it to the conference finals.
It's been the system that's perfect for James Harden.
And they almost beat a stacked one of the most skilled teams of all time, the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant.
The keyword there is almost, Arjun. The keyword is almost. Almost meaning they didn't get there. They didn't win.
That doesn't matter. I mean, how do you get past a team like that? You put up any team against them. No one could get past that Warriors team. The Cavs couldn't stand a chance. The Rockets were really the only team that could really stand a chance to get them. LeBron got blown out every game. That's not LeBron's fault. The Cavs just weren't.
But LeBron didn't have Chris Paul on his team. LeBron didn't have Clint Capella playing center. He only had himself and George Hill on that team.
I understand that, but he still didn't win. If you're going to use that argument against me, I'm going to use that argument against you.
Right, I have another James Harden question just to throw at you guys, which is about the Bucks. Just real quick, if James Harden is traded to the Bucks, depending on the package, say the package includes Middleton and mainly draft compensation around that, would a James Harden Bucks be your contenders, and by how much? Colin, what do you think?
Definitely. If you can retain Drew Holiday, definitely, because you have that duo of Drew Holiday and James Harden, and you have Giannis running the power forward. You put anybody at center and small forward, I don't care. They're my title favorites. You know, I think that that James Harden, again, generational talent, Drew Holiday, great defender, that partially makes up for James Harden's defense. And Giannis, obviously, great defender. So the team is really good on defense. And again, defense is very important, a lot more important than some people think. And you're also explosive on offense with James Harden. And sometimes in the bubble, there was a struggle to score. There was a struggle to get anything going. Harden is that spark. And if he doesn't make a three, if he's cold stretch, he gets to the line. He gets you line. He gets you points. You have a great offense, best defense in the league. Easily title favorites because the guys that they're going up against, the Brooklyn Nets, you have KD, who's still a question mark right now. I understand that he's going to be good. We don't know how good. You have Kyrie, who plays good, but is he really a fit on any team with his personality? I don't know. They have a pretty good supporting cast, but you just can't beat those three.
I'm going to keep this quick because, Ben, I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm with Colin on this one because if you look at this team, like you said, you summed it up completely because they still have Middleton. This is the most talented starting five. You have Brook Lopez, who is still a very capable. I mean, Brook Lopez is one of the best defending centers in the league. So you have the best defending team. I mean, you've got Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, who can give you shooting. Harden's going to give you shooting. Giannis is going to give you. I mean, Giannis is going to be Giannis. So the only teams that I think that they're going to be the favorites to win the championship by, am I going to say by far? No, I'm not going to say by far because, of course, there's always LeBron and AD, but they're my favorites.
All right, so I somewhat agree with you. I think they're definitely my favorites to get out of the East because, of course, there are the question marks around KD and around Kyrie. But like, if KD and Kyrie can be healthy and be what they were before, say KD is 85% of what he was before, they'll be my title favorites because of the bench that team has and the supporting cast around them that they have. Especially with the addition of Bruce Brown for basically nothing this offseason. That was great. I think that they'll be my favorites if that happens, but that's a complete hypothetical. Say they only give up maybe like Middleton, a young piece, and picks, then absolutely they'll be my favorites to get out of the East. I can't pick them above LeBron and AD though. That team, I mean, I've said this before. I think most people have said this also. This is probably the best team that LeBron James has played on. I mean, you have Wade and Bosh, but you have Anthony Davis. He's never had a top 3 guy in the NBA on his team as well. And then you have Dennis Schroeder, who's capable of putting up 20 points per game. You have and at center position, you have Montrezl Harrell. That's another. I mean, Dennis Smith was the runner-up for Sixth Man of the Year. Then you get Montrezl Harrell, Sixth Man of the Year. He's going to come off the bench for you, improving your bench. You got Marc Gasol to start at center. I can't pick anybody to be the favorites. I think the only way that a team becomes the favorites to win over the Lakers is if James Harden goes to the Nets. And I mean, that's definitely not going to happen because they don't have enough assets that are young to give to them. I think that there's really, I don't care if they get James Harden for a second round pick. I can't pick them against this Lakers team because the Lakers have LeBron James and they have Anthony Davis. They have this team that is just so far superior above these other teams. But also, when you say by far, of course, I can't say they're by far my favorites to win the East because of just how talented the NBA this year and how top heavy the NBA this year is, especially in the Eastern and Western Conference when it comes to the teams like the Celtics could take them down easily. I mean, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have to take huge steps up, especially with Kemba Walker being out for the first 2 months. They could easily take that team down in the playoffs. They perform in the playoffs. The Raptors even. The Raptors have shown that they can compete in the playoffs, especially even without Kawhi Leonard. I can't make them my by far favorites, but I can definitely make them my favorites in the East. But unless you guys have anything else to say, I do want to move on to our last thing in the NBA to talk about before we talk about the NFL, which is which team of this group is more likely to fall into the play-in because one team will have to for this season in the East? The Heat, Pacers, Raptors, or Sixers? Arjun, what do you think?
I'll keep this brief because I think this is just an obvious choice for me. This is just, I don't see how you could choose different for me, but I'm thinking the Raptors have a lot of young talent that are still getting better. Even though Siakam had a fiasco last playoffs, I think he's still a terrific player. And they have young talent. They've got Van Vliet. Lowry's the only aging player on that team. The Heat also have a progressing team. They're going to be a top team in the East, not a top 2 contender, but they're going to be a contender. I'm going to say the Pacers are going to be the team that's probably going to make the play-in because they didn't really make any big moves. They're just a team that's a good team. They're just not matching up with those other teams. Those are like big teams because they still have TJ Warren, Domantas Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon, but they just don't match the firepower of the Raptors or the Heat.
No, so I mean, I get where the point comes from for that, and they were the 5 seed last year, but I think it goes down. I'm honestly, I'm going to exclude the Sixers from the conversation, not because they're like undisputed to not get there, because I think they do have a decent chance to be that 7 seed, like depending on how the season goes. But like they're a huge question mark on how that fit will be, so I'm going to generally exclude them. Just know that if you're listening or you guys right here. I think that my picks are between the Pacers and the Heat. And I know the Heat come off as like, whoa, they went to the finals last year. You can't pick the Heat to go to the play-in game. How are they going to go from the 4 seed to this? No. Okay, so the Nets. Obviously, the Nets are better than them. There's no question there. The Nets are better than them. They were the 4 seed last year. Let's remember that. And I still think they're a great team. They're, no matter where they are seated, they're a threat to go back to the NBA Finals because of how well they perform in the playoffs. But when it comes down to it, they were a 4 seed last year. Did they get that much better to really progress in their rankings? No. Were there teams that hopped up above them? Like, I think the Sixers will be a regular season team that's better than them next season. Yes. Are the Nets going to be a better regular season team than them next year? Yes. Because Jimmy Butler, as great as he was in the playoffs, he's still a 19 point per game, high production, but not that high of production for what they want him to be guy in the regular season. I can't pick them above the Pacers really either. I think I have to go with the Heat to be in the play-in game out of these teams unless something crazy happens, because Jimmy Butler and that supporting cast, They are great. They are progressing. That is a good team. But when you look at the Pacers, they were the 5 seed last year, only a couple games behind the Heat, and they didn't have Victor Oladipo. They didn't have the best player on their team, for God's sakes. They didn't have their all-star playing the entire year. So you look at the Pacers, they essentially add in an all-star this season and to their already great supporting cast. And they already have Malcolm Brogdon's also going to progress. So generally, I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Pacers to be above the Heat next season because of what they added, not from free agency, not from the draft, not from trades, but just from their injury reserve. I think that they have to be above the Heat next season unless Victor Oladipo stoops down to a role player's role. But Colin, what do you think?
I don't even understand how you can think that. Nevertheless, say it out loud to a group of people who are listening. The Miami Heat were in the championship. This is not the NCAA tournament where you advance by winning a single game. You win 4 games in a 7-game series to advance. This is not just a fluke. This is not a Cinderella run. This is good coaching. This is good players. This is a team that works together. This team swept the Pacers in the first round. I understand the Pacers got better. I think they got better. They have players back from injury. The Pacers are not a bad team. They are not better than the Heat, who just won a championship and swept them.
They lost the championship, but no, the thing is, it's a regular season thing. Like, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah, they got swept in the playoffs, but in the regular season last year, without Victor Oladipo, they were only 3 games worse, or I don't remember how many games, but they were only a couple games worse than the Heat last regular season. I get that they went to the championship.
They do, but they have a brand new coach.
It's not a fluke that they went to the championship. But when it goes to the regular season, you look at 2 teams that were almost identical in regular season-wise that played in the first round because they were right next to each other in the rankings. But the Pacers, on paper, should be a better regular season team next year because they added an all-star. I get you want to say, oh, Jimmy Butler will carry it on to the regular season, but is there any proof of that? Has he ever carried what he does in the playoffs into the regular season? No. He's always been a statistically better player in the playoffs than in the regular season. And I'm not taking anything away from him for that. I'm applauding him for that. But for that reason, I have to put this team, the Pacers, above the Heat because they are adding an all-star back to their roster that they didn't have last season, and they were still great. People were saying they were going to be a bottom feeder in the East, and then they without Victor Oladipo, were the 5 seed, and they will drop, but I do think they will be better than the Miami Heat next season.
But one thing I do want to say before we move on is Victor Oladipo came back and averaged about 12.5 points per game. He was not the same player. I understand he's had more time to heal, to get better over this break. He was not the same player. Maybe he will be after this. Maybe he will.
Yeah, that was a small sample size, though. He really didn't play a lot of games.
I know it's a very small sample size, but I think that the Pacers have a new coach who is adjusting. Their system is adjusting. Their players are going to adjust to that. They don't have a clear leader. I know Oladipo is said to be a clear leader. There was a lot of talk about him wanting to lead the team, and I know that resonates with other players. I don't know that the players are happy with the situation. I don't know the managers are happy with the situation. And they were clearly trying to get Hayward because they weren't satisfied with their team. What does that tell me? If an organization is not confident with their team, the team is not going to be confident. The Heat knew, they felt that they were going to be good last year. The organization was good. They have a good coach. They have rookies that they put trust in and develop throughout the season. So that's another thing. They dropped some games early. Why? Because they had 2 rookies starting at point guard and shooting guard. And when that happens, those guys are adjusting. They're adjusting to coaching. Their coaches are adjusting to coaching them. The Heat, I think, maintain the same or a slightly better record in the regular season, and the Pacers maintain the same or get slightly worse.
No, but I mean, just real quick before we move on. I mean, you talked about management and how players probably won't be happy. You can't imagine Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, all these guys, even Kelly Olynyk, Andre Iguodala, the guys that are going to be essentially traded for James Harden, all these rumors, especially when you're on the Heat, you're included in a rumor every other day. You can't imagine these guys are happy with their current situation if your name isn't Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo, because you know that you essentially the next day could be traded for a superstar.
But what if they said the Heat are saying they won't give up Tyler Hero? The Heat are confident in their team. They're happy with what they have, and they haven't made any push for James Harden. The Rockets are trying to trade there. The Heat have not shown very much interest in that from what I've seen. And I don't really feel like the players feel threatened by that on the Heat because in the Pacers side of things, management was pushing and giving up way too much for Gordon Hayward and trying to get him. So I just feel like the Miami Heat are in a better position in so many different ways.
All right, so now moving on to the NFL. The first thing I do want to talk about, of course, is like our fourth straight time talking about the Steelers. But of course, they are the ranked tied for number one finally team in the NFL. But my question for you guys is, who is the bigger problem for the Steelers offense, the quarterbacks or the receivers?
I'll start this one off. Ben, as much as you don't like Ben Roethlisberger, I think you have to give him credit where credit's due. And I'm going to place the blame on the receivers because most of the Steelers receivers are on the low 60s for receptions. If you look at Claypool, Johnson, Connor, Juju, and Ebron, they've all had 25 drops. Claypool has 3 fumbles. Ben had to throw 53 passes last game. And I mean, the Steelers running backs had 14 attempts and 21 yards last game. So if you can't rely on if you don't have a good running game and you're having this guy throw the ball like almost every play, then what do you do when you can't rely on your running game? It's just tiring. So if you look at Ben, he's 13. I mean, he's 13th in first downs, 15 NFL rating. The Steelers lead the league in drops. Ben is a terrific quarterback right now, and you can't put the blame on Ben because the receivers just have not been in top shape.
No, you can't talk about Ben Roethlisberger like he's the one being held back. Especially, let me just give you a little sample of what Ben Roethlisberger is doing to these receivers. I know there have been drops, there have been inconsistencies, but the inconsistencies don't weigh out what Ben Roethlisberger is holding back the receivers from. He's holding these receivers back because his arm strength lacks so much. The guy, I mean, as much as we joke about Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger can't throw the ball anywhere past like 15 yards down the field. I mean,
does that result in the drop numbers?
It results in being the last in the league in first and second down conversions. They have to convert on third down because he can't throw more than 5 yards half the time. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster's average depth of target is 5.4 yards, 169th in the league. Juju Smith-Schuster yards before the catch, 4 yards before the catch. And when you talk about catches and when you talk about drops, yes, they've had recent problems with drops, but you yourself have called them a top 5 receiver core in the league. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? And is that why they're the problem? Is because they're a top 5 receiver core in the league with a below mediocre quarterback? They have a below mediocre quarterback that can't throw the ball downfield throwing for them. I know he leads them back in the fourth quarter after he brings them down, but when you look at catch percentage and when you look at drop percentage, catch percentage, Juju Smith-Schuster, Eric Ebron, these guys, all the guys that you're talking about that are dropping footballs for this team, they have a higher catch percentage than who? DK Metcalf, the guy you call top 5, and you want to say that this team, their problem is the receivers? There's so much wrong with that statement. And when you look at drop percentage, you want to look at players with a higher drop percentage than Juju Smith-Schuster. His most reliable receiver is Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, Stephon Diggs, and again, your boy, Mr. Better Than Julio Jones, DK Metcalf. These receivers, they haven't been the greatest receivers in the league in the past 2 games, especially Eric Ebron. But he's throwing to Eric Ebron half the time, but Ben Roethlisberger picks one receiver to throw to the entire game and doesn't throw to anybody else. But when you look at it, you know who you could just throw to? Juju Smith-Schuster. You know who you could have going more than 5 yards downfield per game? Juju Smith-Schuster. He ran 1 route longer than 20 yards last game against the football team, and only 2 routes were ran by him over 10 where he was attempting to throw at the football.
Okay, so if Drew Brees is if Drew Brees can't throw past 20 yards and his receivers are putting up these great numbers, you can't say that because of Ben Roethlisberger's arm strength. I'm gonna actually call and go ahead and get your take in.
All right, I'll go ahead with this one. My take on this is there's not one problem. And the reason I say this is because as a quarterback, my standard that I hold a quarterback to is you can't affect the game. You can't dictate the outcome of a game in a negative way. The quarterback should not be what you rely on to dictate the outcome of the game. If you're an effective team, I think. Ben Roethlisberger puts them in a position to win. He has shown that throughout the season. They're 11-1. He puts them in a position to win. However, he cannot throw the ball downfield. And that puts them in a position where they can't move the ball that fast. They don't have a running attack, which forces them to throw every time. And defense kind of knows what they're going to do because they don't throw very far. They run very similar plays. And so, again, part of this coaching. And you look at the wide receivers. The wide receivers, they have most drops in the league. They're inconsistent. So I think all of that combined produces a problem, but there's not one area that you can sit there and say, this is the individual problem, because it's an entire team problem with the running backs, the wide receivers, and the quarterback. And they all lack certain abilities, and that just doesn't work out that well. And that was all shown against the football team.
Yeah, I see your point with that, Colin. I think, to a certain extent, I do agree with you. I think that Mike Tomlin hasn't done a good job with utilizing James Conner as well, because he's a terrific running back, but he just doesn't. They don't use him enough. The thing is that if you have been throwing the ball most of the time, since James Conner's been injured, if you haven't thrown 53 passes a game, he's going to get fatigued. He's going to get tired over the game. He's going to throw the ball. I mean, he already can't throw the ball very far. So if you haven't thrown the ball several times, then it's not like he's going to be as effective.
I mean, the perk of Ben Roethlisberger is that he's led them to the most fourth quarter comebacks, and I guess that shows you a lot about the team and how they are massively overrated, that he's led them to the most fourth quarter comebacks of any team in the league. That's the idea of him, is that he doesn't really fatigue like that. Like he's very useful when it comes to fourth quarter comebacks. But carry on, Arjun.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. But the thing is that if you want to place the blame on Ben, you also have to realize that this guy, he was once upon a time an amazing quarterback. And he's, after fighting a legal case for 2 years, he's been back now. He's 15th in the NFL, and 15th in the NFL in terms of overall passer rating. So he's not I take back what I said. He's not an amazing quarterback. He's a solid quarterback. I do say that you want to put some blame on him because he's got to do better. The receivers also have to do better. But hey, they're an 11-1. They lost. The Washington football team, as many jokes as you want to make about them, they still have a top 5 defense in the league. They're really underrated. Just as I predicted in one of the early episodes, they would be near the top for the NFC East, and they're in a good position right now.
Yeah, they're in a very good position right now. But generally, I just believe that Ben Roethlisberger not delivering the ball to his players anywhere more than, Juju against the Washington football team, never had a completed pass to him more than 6 yards. But anyways, I do want to talk about the next thing, which is Baker Mayfield turning a corner in his career? I'll actually start this off. I know you guys love to slander. I know especially Arjun loves to slander Baker Mayfield, and most people do, because he's very easy to slander. He's a very media top heavy guy. He likes to be out there. He likes to be expressive of what he's like, and he has been inconsistent over his career and kind of inconsistent this year. But when it comes to turning the corner, it completely comes down to what you define turning the corner is. Like, obviously, I don't think he's a number 1 overall pick like he was worthy player, and he's not turning that corner. That's obviously not what he's going to do. He's been sort of inconsistent this year, and he's proven that he's not going to be that level. But I think he can be an above average quarterback. I never thought he was going to be more than an above average quarterback when he came into the league. That's kind of what I see that's why I see him as. Once he gets consistent, he'll be pretty good. And this Browns team, I don't think, it's kind of off topic, but I don't think that him turning the corner to become a number 1 overall pick player like he was supposed to be is what they need. Like, they're 8-3 this year. That defense is damn good. They have a very high pressure offense. They have a very high tempo offense. They have great running backs. They have Odell Beckham, and they have Jarvis Landry. Of course, Odell Beckham's practically out the door. He demanded a trade, but they can get assets back for him too. I think he's turned the corner from last season. Of course, he was atrocious. He threw 27 touchdowns, 22 interceptions, and he's improved from that season, but like, it's the same numbers that he put up in his rookie season that he's putting up this year. I think that, of course, he's turning the corner from last year, and he's turning the corner to become an above average quarterback, and a quarterback that can win something for God's sakes. But I don't think he's turning the corner to be a number 1 overall pick.
I completely agree. One game doesn't tell me anything. One game shows me that he can perform well. I don't think he is turning any sort of quarter. we talked about a couple weeks ago, he went 3 games straight without throwing a touchdown. That's against the Raiders, who have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, the Texans, who have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and the Eagles. No touchdowns thrown at any of those. I understand Odell's out. I understand Jarvis Landry is his best target. He did not throw a single touchdown in 3 games straight, and now people are praising him for a 4-touchdown game. 4-touchdown game is very solid. But he's not consistent. But again, I will give him this. He is not the deciding factor in whether his team wins or not. He has put them in a position to win this season, whether his numbers have looked good or not. So he is good for them. Like you said, Ben, he's not becoming that number 1 overall pick caliber player. He is what they need as a quarterback right now because he is putting them in a position to win, but he's doing no more than that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Colin, because if you're Baker Mayfield, you need to prove more. I mean, he had one good game against the Titans defense. You need to show me more if you want to show me that you're turning the corner. Now, if you look at the Titans game, he fell apart in the second half. They almost came back with Derrick Henry having a terrible game. Tannehill really took over. He has a 62 completion percentage over the season. Now, Colin, I think you got great examples of bringing up those games because he put up 122 yards against the Oakland Raiders defense. He put up 132 yards against the Texans defense. I mean, the Browns' recent success is thanks to the return of Chubb, who's a top running back in the league, and Jarvis Landry has stepped up. I mean, Higgins has stepped up, and when you look at this team, they have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. These are 2 capable running backs. And if you're Baker Mayfield, like I've said, you just need to prove more. You need to do what you bring, that same energy you brought to the Titans game and play like that against New England. You have a bunch of big games. We all know you're going to be facing up against Stephon Gilmore. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think that Baker Mayfield, just going back to what I said before, he's turning a corner. Like, he's turned the corner this season. Of going back to last season, people were saying, oh, like, don't extend his 5th-year option in 2 years because he's terrible. Like, that's how bad he was. He was like what we talk about when we talk about Carson Wentz and Daniel Jones this season, how bad they've been. Like, Baker Mayfield, he's not excellent. And again, I never thought he was going to be excellent, but he's just enough for this team to win. It's kind of like my quarterback philosophy where I think NFL teams don't need that great quarterback to win. We saw it with Nick Foles. We saw the 49ers get there with Jimmy Garoppolo with how mediocre he was. I think that Baker Mayfield could turn out being more than enough of what a team like the Browns currently have. Of course, they need to add more pieces, could be to get there, to get that final push. They don't need that excellent quarterback. I think Baker Mayfield has turned the corner to being like, oh, if this guy gets a little more consistent, we could in a couple of years be that team that goes a little farther. That team that finally, he secured them the first winning record in ever. I don't remember what the complete stat was, but like, you got to give the guy some props for what he's done. Of course, he's not turning the corner to what he was supposed to be when he came into the draft, according to most people, but he's turned the corner from what he was supposed to be last year into a very suitable quarterback this season. And of course, I want to see more out of him before I believe more than the Baker Mayfield cycle that everyone believes. But anyways, next thing I do want to talk about, which is, has Josh Allen proven to be an elite quarterback in this league? Colin, what do you think?
No, he has not proven that to me yet because he has led his team to a 9-3 season. He has around 3,000 yards on the season, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Very, very good numbers. In my opinion, right now in the league, just this season, there are 3 elite quarterbacks. You could even argue 2. You've got Rodgers, you've got Mahomes, and you've got Russell Wilson. And I think Russell Wilson could be argued. Russell Wilson could be argued because of his recent games, but you still have to look at that first part of the season. Josh Allen, in my opinion, is just not quite in that conversation yet. I think that he has a lot of good wide receivers around him. He has a very good team. And I just don't think that he has proven to me that he can be a completely elite quarterback.
Ben,
right,
can I?
No.
I know. Ben, I know what you're going to say. Can I just quickly get my take in?
Sure. Go crazy.
Let's be quick. But yeah, I'm with Colin in this one. I actually kind of disagree with Colin that he has been a terrific quarterback. And when I call elite, I think for this season he has been somewhat of elite. But what I want for me to call him an elite quarterback, I need him to perform in the postseason. I mean, Josh Allen, in my opinion, is the seventh best quarterback in the league. His receivers are, I mean, insane. He's got Cole Beasley, but mainly Stephon Diggs, who is one of the best vertical threats in the league. But I mean, he threw 52% completion in last year's playoffs. He absolutely choked last year. So for him to be an elite quarterback, I just need to see him prove it in the playoffs.
All right, so Colin, obviously we have different values of elite, and I think your value of elite is kind of ridiculous, especially since you left out Deshaun Watson out of that list. Deshaun Watson has proven this year and the year before this that he's been that same level as Aaron Rodgers and especially Russell Wilson, where he's definitely in that elite tier. You have to absolutely call him an elite quarterback, especially since he's doing it with nothing, especially this year. This year he would be an MVP candidate if they had more wins, but the team has failed him. Bill O'Brien failed him, and he's putting up better numbers than Russell Wilson and just about the same numbers as Aaron Rodgers this year with absolutely nothing compared to Devontae Adams. But going back to Josh Allen, I think he's an elite quarterback, and I think you have to define him as an elite quarterback because of what he's doing. He isn't, of course, there's the postseason struggles that he had last year. That was questionable, and he worked with a decent team. But I'm just gonna lay out some stats for you. Honestly, I can't say much with words about Josh Allen because I haven't watched Bills games this season. I don't know a ton of people who have watched Bills games this season, but I mean, I know he's a dual threat quarterback, but. You look at completion percentage, you look at quarterbacks ranked below him, you have Tom Brady, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, and Patrick Mahomes ranked behind him in completion percentage. You look at quarterback rating, you look at Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, and Lamar Jackson ranked below him. And I think those are three. I would say Tom Brady's no longer elite, but Lamar and Kyler Murray are absolutely elite quarterbacks, and he's ranked above both of those guys in every single category that I'm going to list. And then touchdown percentage and touchdowns and in interception percentage, he's better than Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, and Lamar Jackson. I think when you listen to the names that I'm naming, you have to consider him elite with how he's playing with elite numbers. I mean, he has a higher completion percentage than Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers has Devontae Adams. I'm in no means saying he's better than Aaron Rodgers, but the fact that he's even in that conversation means that you have to put him in the elite conversation at least. I think he's absolutely there. I think he's elite. I think he's more of like, if you're separating the elite from the elite, like Patrick Mahomes, obviously tier 1, and then Rodgers and Wilson would be tier 2 elite, or with Deshaun Watson in that tier. And then I think Josh Allen's like tier 3 of elite. I think you have to put him in like that bottom tier of elite players, though, because I think he's absolutely elite. But of course, we have different definitions of what that is. But I absolutely think he's an elite quarterback.
Yeah, I think our definitions of elite are very different. Elite is the best of the best of the best, in my opinion. Deshaun Watson and Josh Allen, to me, are the next two in to be elite. I think when you started naming off these quarterbacks and you said you thought Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray are elite, neither of them have shown me this season that they are elite. I understand how good Lamar Jackson is. I understand what he did last season. He has not replicated that this season at all. The team has been largely disappointing. Kyler Murray has fallen off some lately. I'm really not sure that he's elite. He throws a lot of picks. Neither of those players are really too close to that elite category, in my opinion, because I think, to me, elite is just the very, very top of the NFL, and I think it's a misused term.
But I think obviously Lamar has underperformed this year, but that is because he has no weapons. I mean, you can't expect him to carry on what he did last year forever with Willie Snead and Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown as his first and second option throwing two wise. And of course, his running game is very weak with Mark Ingram. I don't see much optimism for him to carry on for much longer if they don't get him any help. But Arjun, what are you saying?
I see both of your sides, Colin. I think I'm more siding with Ben on the elite idea because Lamar Jackson is still the best running quarterback in the league. And I think defenses have really figured him out because there's no vertical threat in that team. And Kyler Murray, he has a lot of weapons, but he's still so young and he's got so much potential. But Lamar Jackson, we say this time and time again on this podcast, he just needs those weapons. I mean, all the opposing defense knows that they just need to box their safeties in. And when Lamar Jackson tries to run, they're all just right there. So, yeah, I just think that Josh Allen, he needs to prove in the playoffs that he can play really well on this team. I think he's put up great numbers, and I'm excited for what he can do in the future.
Yeah, I think obviously he's put up great numbers. It was excellent that they added Stephon Diggs, and I think a big argument to him being an elite quarterback is the fact that they've added Stephon Diggs this year. Because I mean, you've seen Stephon Diggs his entire career. I know he's had Kirk Cousins. I know he's had like the mediocrity at the quarterback position in Minnesota, but I mean, his numbers have been through the roof for his career comparisons to what he used to do when he was in Minnesota. When you look at what he's doing with Josh Allen, the huge increase that he's had. But generally, I do want to move on to the last thing we will talk about today, which is Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes your NFL MVP, Arjun?
Ooh, all right. I'm going to go with Rodgers in this one because after time to think about it and looking at the stats and understanding what MVP means, I've chosen Rodgers. Now, both these quarterbacks have great arguments for this, but I'm just going to give you a bunch of stats because Rodgers has a higher EPA expected points than Mahomes. I mean, he has a higher PFF grade, higher touchdown rate, lower sack rate, higher completion percentage. He's been sacked less times. He's only been hit has thrown once because if you watch Rodgers, he can throw that ball. He can get that ball out of his hands in like no quarterback can throw it as fast as Rodgers can. He's got a higher NFL rating. His adjusted completion percentage is higher. Now, but besides these stats, if you look at the Packers, they're a team where they've got a good defense. I mean, they've got Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams who can straight up play. But the defenses know that Rodgers isn't going to beat them on the ground, so they just need to focus all their attention on Devontae Adams, a top 3 receiver in the league. And even though all the defense is putting all their attention on Devontae Adams, it's amazing how Aaron Rodgers still manages to find him every time because he's such a terrific passer. I mean, you look at Mahomes. Mahomes has Watkins. He's got Hardman. I mean, he's got the fastest wide receiver in the league. He's got Tyreek Hill, and he's got the best tight end in the league, Travis Kelce. No wonder this guy, I mean, he's doing so well. I mean, Mahomes is a great quarterback, but if you just look at what Rodgers has and what Mahomes has, Rodgers is just, I mean, he's more valuable to that team.
No, okay, so the most valuable, I think, there's a clear argument for Aaron Rodgers getting that award. There's no question that he has an argument to be in question for that award, but I don't think that there's really a big argument for him, I think, this year, especially when you're cherry-picking stats. You're not really using a good argument. You're just cherry-picking EPA, pro football grade. I think you just have to look at the fact that, yeah, he does have, like, Sammy Watkins, he has the best tight end in the league. He is a top 3, top 5 receiver in the league in Tyreek Hill. But then, like, Sammy Watkins and I think you also said McCall Hardman, like, you can't put those guys in the same conversation as Devontae Adams, and I know.
No, Ben, I'm not saying
I know he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers.
Really fast. He's still a solid receiver.
Aaron Rodgers doesn't have Kelce. He doesn't have Hill, but he has the best receiver in the league, and he has a decent tight end. He has a decent receiver core besides that. Like it's also not it's not the same as the NBA that's like, oh, James Harden is the reason this team wins games because the rest of the team, like in the regular season, there's nothing else on that team. Quarterbacks don't solely win you games. Defense wins you games too. I think when you look at it, I mean, Patrick Mahomes has led his team to be the best team in the NFL as the quarterback, if you do want to use that argument, and he has just put up better numbers than him. He's thrown 2 interceptions. He hasn't had a bad game. Aaron Rodgers had a bad game against the Colts. We haven't seen Patrick Mahomes play bad this year, and we really haven't seen Patrick Mahomes play bad in his 3 years he started in the NFL, especially this year. I think you have to give it to him because of what he's doing with this Chiefs team that he has, and I know they are probably the most talented team without him, but it's who is the most valuable player when they are on the field. It's not the most valuable to their team when it comes to the NFL. It's who is the most valuable player on the field, and that's Patrick Mahomes. And I think, especially this season, you have to give it to Patrick Mahomes for what he's done.
I don't think you can give it to Patrick Mahomes this season. I understand Patrick Mahomes has more yards. Rodgers has 36 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, so that's 5 more touchdowns. Yeah, it's 2 more interceptions. I get that, but still a great touchdown to interception ratio. Rodgers does not have the same caliber of a team around him that Mahomes does. Mahomes, like you all said, best tight end in the league, top 5 wide receiver in the league. Watkins is a good backup wide receiver. Hardman's a good backup wide receiver. And he's got all these guys. And on any given night, a different wide receiver shines because the defenses can't focus on just one because there's so many that he can throw to because they're all good and adequate wide receivers and weapons. Rodgers has one guy, Devontae Adams, that he throws to. One guy. And then you've got Valdez Scantling, and that guy drops so many passes. Oh, my gosh, it is painful. But, I mean, he's got one guy that he throws to, and he finds him every single time. Even when
because
the
he can't be guarded.
Exactly what he's gonna do. They know he's not.
It doesn't matter if it's double, triple, quadruple. No matter what the coverage on Devontae Adams, you can't guard Devontae Adams. He's a different type of receiver than Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill can beat a guy on a route, but I mean any guy that's above 5'9" is guarding Tyreek Hill because of the height difference, as long as they're within some sort of range of him. I think Devontae Adams, you can't guard Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams is unguardable. That's why I think he's the best receiver in the league, especially this season. And Aaron Rodgers, when you compare their teams of course are lopsided. The Chiefs have a better supporting cast. They have a better record, and they have it on a tougher schedule, arguably. But I think you have to look at who's the most valuable player when they step on that field, who adds the most to their team in total, not whose team is the worst, because that argument kind of contradicts itself. If Aaron Rodgers wasn't there and Patrick Mahomes wasn't there, these two teams would obviously, the Chiefs would be better. But that's not who's more valuable to their team. It's who's more valuable when they step on the field, who adds more to their team. Patrick Mahomes adds triple to this team because he's been so valuable this season.
And I see your point there, but the thing is that there was a certain extent, of course, Devontae Adams is a great receiver, but to a certain extent, when you're triple coverage, when you're quadruple coverage, you need a good pass. You need an amazing pass. And Rodgers is in his 15th year. I mean, no one expected him to put up these kind of numbers, and you have to give credit where credit's due. Now, if you want, I still think that if you talk about pure value, I think that Rodgers has the edge in that one because both have solid. I mean, of course, the Chiefs have the Honey Badger. They've got Tyrann Mathieu, and of course, the Packers have Jair Alexander. But if you want to talk about pure value, I just think that not Patrick Mahomes. I think that Aaron Rodgers just brings more of that value to the table. I mean, his passing ability is unheard of.
Exactly.
Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, if you're bringing up that, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback that I think anybody has ever seen. I think he's the best, most skilled, most talented quarterback there's ever been. Of course, he's not the greatest because he hasn't done enough to be the greatest. But when you talk about best, when you talk about who's the best when they come onto the field, that's Patrick Mahomes. And especially since you're talking about this one season, it's the MVP award of this season. It's Patrick Mahomes. When he steps on the field, he hasn't had a bad game. Against Tampa Bay, Aaron Rodgers had 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And Patrick Mahomes hasn't had that type of game. He hasn't had a bad game. He's thrown 2 interceptions. They've been in separate games where he still willed his team to a close game. He got blown out, and it was because of him. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, he got blown out by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because of his own bad performances against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think that you have to give it to Patrick Mahomes just because he's played more valuable football. When he steps on the field, he brings more valuable to the team. He brings more value just in general to the game of football, and I think that's why you have to give him the award.
But the thing is, it is the most valuable player award. What player is most valuable? Aaron Rodgers is the most valuable because, Arjun, like you said, Devontae Adams doesn't simply catch the pass without somebody throwing it exactly where it needs to be when he's in this triple coverage, whatever he's in. He catches that pass because Aaron Rodgers is such a good passer, puts it right where it needs to be. And Ben, you kept making these arguments trying to back Patrick Mahomes, saying, the most valuable player, Patrick Mahomes is the most valuable player on his team. But again, if you take these two quarterbacks out of these two teams and put the same quarterback in either team, the Chiefs are obviously still better. They're better right now. But the Packers are far worse, I think, because any team can figure out exactly what the Packers are going to do. They're going to throw to Devontae Adams. And I think Aaron Rodgers still, with these teams understanding that, performs.
Teams have to worry about the Packers' run game. That argument's also kind of wacky because you look at Aaron Rodgers, he has Aaron Jones in the backfield. He's no Christian McCaffrey, he's no Derrick Henry. You have to worry about that. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the current Le'Veon Bell, are those things that you have to go into the game worrying about? No, you worry about limiting Patrick Mahomes. And yes, he has great weapons, but you play a very pass-heavy defense, whereas when you're going against the Packers, you do have to worry about that run game. You have to respect that run game because,
No, Ben.
as we saw last week, I mean, Aaron Jones can do what he wants if he gets the hole.
No, Ben,
but you've got four different wide receivers in the Chiefs. You have four different wide receivers.
They're not four different elite.
They're not
four different elite guys. I mean, like McCole Hardman, Sammy Watkins, they're fast as hell, but there's a reason they're not Pro Bowl type receivers. Is because that route running is not to the level that.
If you want to take Pro Bowl into account, we'll do that. So Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, Pro Bowlers, and then you've got Devontae Adams, Pro Bowler. That's one Pro Bowler versus two Pro Bowlers.
Jones.
Right there.
No, Ben, I see your point with Aaron Jones. That's a fair point. But when you have a guy like Kelce can very well put up 200 yards. Tyreek Hill put up like 300 yards the last game.
Yeah, they can put up 200, 300 yards with the guy throwing them the football.
No, but Ben, I know they're passing the football, but Travis Kelce is more Travis Kelce as a tight end, he's more dangerous in a certain to like a certain level. I mean, you have to worry about Kelce's muscle and his ability to catch. I mean, you have to like place heavy coverage. You have to place a lot of people with him, but then
I mean, Tyreek
Hill's a different weapon. He's a speed demon. I mean,
they wouldn't be as elite. They wouldn't be as elite as they're considered if they didn't have the best quarterback in football throwing them the ball.
Well, if you're talking about that kind of an argument, then you have to take into account that the Packers would be worse without Rodgers.
You take both quarterbacks into account. That's why that argument is bad. Because, yes, the Packers have a generally worse team. That's why it's kind of contradicting to make sure that whoever's on the worst team gets the MVP because their team sucks. No, Ben, because in the NFL, you have to look at the player who brings the most value to the team, and that is Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion. But that is all the time we have for today. We actually went a little over, but before we leave, again, if you're still watching, I love you. We all love you here. You're a GOAT.
You guys are legends if you're still watching.
Thank you for sticking to the end. If you're still here and you haven't liked or subscribed, if you haven't subscribed and turned on the notification bell, what are you doing? You just watched an entire podcast and didn't subscribe. You should go ahead and do that right now. And if you have some money to spend, maybe you have a family member who watches us too, and you want to get a hoodie or a shirt or a pillow or a cover or a thing for their wall, you can get anything for them on our website. I think it's all on a Christmas sale right now, especially the hoodies, the pillows, and the covers. But anyways, that is all from us today, and we'll catch you guys later.